Today we have Bryan Johnson as our speaker today. Bryan is in the insurance industry, and let me just tell you a little bit about his background. He graduated from Utah State University with a BA in Business Administration, and during that time worked 25 or 30 hours a week while he worked his way through school. I'm sure many of you can empathize with that. He then worked as a professional medical representative for Pfizer Pharmaceuticals for 4 years, and during that time, when he was working in Spokane, Washington, was ranked #1 in the Western states for one of their 6-month evaluation periods. In 1985, he became a State Farm insurance agent, and that's when 1986 is when my family came to him as our insurance agent. And working with State Farm, he's currently has 4 individuals working for him. He's been a member of the Silver Scroll Club since 1987 and has attained the State Farm Legion of Honor Award for all but 4 years since 1987 that he's been in this. And certainly the challenge that he has faced with the onslaught in the last 25 years or so, we've seen many new insurance companies come online in the internet and things like that, but an interesting honor is, despite all of that, though in our home we receive lots of pictures of the gecko and Flo, the honor of gracing our refrigerator remains for Bryan and not for them. And so, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Bryan Johnson.
Thank you, Eugene. It's a pleasure to be here today with you. I feel like I know a little bit about many of you in your age group. I have 3 children who attend UVU, and I've had opportunities to serve in the community and other areas with your age, and I hope I can use stories and ways to let you know a little bit about my industry and my business that'll help you as you pursue careers as business students. Appreciate this invite. As was mentioned by Eugene, I'm Agent Bryan Johnson. I've been with State Farm for 25 years. There are still people who stay connected with one company that many years. It's a little bit different nowadays. But it's a lot easier if you're like me and you've put your blood, sweat, and tears into a business of your own. It's kind of, you don't want to leave that where you put all the effort into creating that business. Now, as we go along, to keep you awake, every once in a while, I am going to bring up actual statements that were made in auto claims by clients. This is not State Farm, and it's not my business, it's the industry. So we'll start with number 1. This is to keep you awake. And this is a statement from a client. Coming home, I drove into the wrong house and collided with a tree I don't have. That was their statement in the claim. I think a little bit about myself from college forward may be beneficial to help you understand why this fit with State Farm was a good fit with me. I graduated from Utah State University in 1982, back when a few of your parents were probably in school. I graduated with BA in Business Administration and Marketing. I did work, as Eugene mentioned, I worked close to 30 hours a week to support myself and my family through school. I learned firsthand the operations of a small clothing store. I also, for 2 different, back then they were terms, not semesters, spent 2 different terms at Hill Air Force Base, at the time in personnel management, which is now human resources. I did that for extra credit and experience in the business world. The final year was preparing for life after college, and I had made a decision that I wanted to get into the business of the medical field. There were a handful of us that were selected to interview with American Hospital Supply down in Santa Ana, California. And so I flew down there, and while I was there, I noticed a building with a unique name on it. I don't know if I pronounced it at the time, Pfizer. Well, that's pronounced Pfizer. And so I looked them up and ended up getting an interview with them in Salt Lake. And they must have liked me because they asked me to go up to Spokane, Washington to interview with the district manager, the Northwest manager, as well as the Western States manager for Pfizer. It was an interesting interview. As we proceeded with the interview, I really thought that my job would be going to all the pharmacies in the area. Pharmaceutical sales is, those two managers kind of taught me on the spot a little bit about what it was really involved in doing that. And pharmaceutical sales is talking to physicians, and when they write the prescription for your products, those pills start popping out of the bottles at the pharmacies. So it's an indirect sell. I did deal with the pharmacies, but that was more on the sideline. My main thrust was to talk with physicians and try to get in to see them. For every product that we sold, there were probably 9, 10 very similar products, and so it was a real, you had to work to get those things popping out of the bottles in the pharmacies. But I did well at it. I enjoyed it. The thing that happened is that as time went on, I would build up my sales area, and Pfizer would come in and say, look, Bryan's built that up, we can bring in another rep. So they'd cut it down and bring in another rep. And that was a little bit disheartening, especially when they'd maybe add a little bit to the area. And they would see communities on a map, and they wouldn't see a mountain range in between those communities that would take a half a day to get to the next area. So logistically, it was interesting, and I felt like corporate America, as good as some are, don't always see how it really is. In fact, I have a fun story that describes a little bit about how I felt then. It's called The Shepherd. A shepherd was herding his flock in a remote pasture when suddenly a brand new BMW advanced out of the dust cloud towards him. The driver, a young man in a brawny suit, Gucci shoes, Ray-Ban sunglasses, and a YSL tie, leans out the window and asks the shepherd, if I tell you exactly how many sheep you have in your flock, will you give me one? The shepherd looks at the man, obviously a yuppie, then looks at his peacefully grazing flock and calmly answered, sure, why not? The yuppie parks his car, whips out his Dell notebook computer, connects to his AT&T cell phone, surfs to an asset page on the internet where he calls up a GPS satellite navigation system to get an exact fit on this location. The young man opens his digital photograph in Adobe Photoshop and exports an image. It goes on. He says, you have exactly 1,586 sheep. That's right. Well, I guess you can take one of my sheep, says the shepherd. He watches the young man select one of the animals and looks on, amused as the young man stuffs it into the trunk of his car. Then the shepherd says to the young man, hey, if I can tell you exactly what your business is, will you give me back my sheep? The young man thinks about it for a second and then says, okay, why not? You're a consultant, said the shepherd. Wow, that's correct, says the yuppie. But how did you guess that? No guessing required, answered the shepherd. You showed up even though nobody called you. You want to get paid for an answer I already knew, to a question I never asked, and you don't know anything about my business. Now give me back my dog. That's a little bit about how I felt about corporate life. My wife and I decided that we needed to decide if we were going to stay with Pfizer for the rest of my working career or if we were going to make a change. We looked at restaurants. It takes a lot of money to fund a restaurant. We had some okays on doing restaurants. Had an okay for one in Idaho Falls, Idaho. We backed out of that mainly because of there was a lot of money that would have been involved, and I really didn't feel like we had that. We went on looking at what we might do, and I was talking with my very good friend who works with State Farm. He said, you should be an agent. You'd be a good agent. He got me in touch with the regional manager for this area out of Colorado, And one thing led to the other, and State Farm offered me a position in Provo. And I thought, well, Provo's got to be the next best thing to Logan. And so we looked at it. I'd always said that Pfizer's a giant in the pharmaceutical arena. It's in the top 5. I said, if I'm going to leave Pfizer, it's got to be the top. State Farm was and continues to be the top insurance company in the United States. We're the largest property and casualty company by market share. We're the largest in Utah, and we're in the top 5 in life insurance. I passed the insurance exams. We moved to Utah in 1985. We did something I had read in journals and stuff about things that were high anxiety things in life, high pressure things. Well, we did 4 of those in 2 months. We moved, sold our home, moved, we changed jobs, and my wife had a baby. All of that in 2 months. So it was a little bit of pressure on there. Okay, we're going to stop for the next claims report. This one says, I had been driving for 40 years when I fell asleep at the wheel and had an accident. Another one, I thought my window was down, but I found that it was up when I put my head through it. I'd like to spend some time today giving you an overview of our company history, the products and service we provide, and the types of marketing and advertising we do, the different jobs we have within our organization, and some of the regulatory issues we deal with as an insurance and financial services company. I will leave some time at the end for questions that you might have. In 1922, motivated by his philosophy of fairness and doing right by the customer, G.J. Maherl sold his first auto policy and State Farm was born. Our founder, G.J. Maherl, himself was an insurance salesman and a retired farmer who felt strongly that if farmers drive less and have fewer accidents because of the areas they live in outside of Chicago, that they should pay less for their insurance. His current employer at the time did not agree with his idea and told him that if he thought his idea had merit, he should start his own company. That's exactly what he did, and why we as a company just celebrated our 88th anniversary. We still have these zones and subzones. Each zip code has a zone and a subzone that, based on the population, the number of accidents, the number of cars out on the road, that we try to get a good definition of how much we should charge for a person that in that area, along with the other definitions such as age, gender, the type of car you drive, etc. After setting up his office in Bloomington, Illinois, which is where our company headquarters remains today, he sold his first auto policy to a local farmer. The 6-month premium for a Henry's, which is a 1999 luxury car, at that time was $11.17. By the way, he didn't start his company alone. He actually had 2 business associates that happened to be women. He formed G.J. Maherl, Inc., and with him were sisters Minnie Jones and Susie E. Jones as incorporators. Minnie and Susie held a combined 40% of the stock in the company, and Minnie not only handled the daily affairs at State Farm home office, but was a director, secretary, treasurer, and member of the executive board. As they say, the rest is history. We now insure more cars and homes than any other insurer in the United States. We are one of the leading insurers in Canada also. Now, State Farm is a mutual company. Mutual company means it's owned by our policyholders. If you or your parents have State Farm, you're probably part owner of State Farm. I would just point this out, as I have seen company actions over the years. If you belong to a company that's owned by a stockholder, or if you have insurance that's owned by a stockholder, if they make a decision, it's generally, how does this decision impact our stockholders? At State Farm, a mutual company, the decision basis is, how will our decision affect our policyholders? We have 67,000 employees and more than 17,000 agents that serve more than 81 million policy and accounts throughout the United States and Canada. We are currently ranked number 34 on the Fortune 500 list of largest companies. We started out as a single-line auto insurance company, but now we offer nearly 100 products and services in 5 different lines of businesses, including life, fire, which is like home, renters, condo insurance, business, bank, and mutual funds. This is my website, but we also have that's the State Farm, www.statefarm.com. There is a lot of things. If for nothing else, you should go to that. There's a lot of wonderful things, calculators if you're looking at buying a car, looking at buying a home. There's a number of wonderful things on there that will help you in your daily life. You can get a quote, you can find an agent, you can do a lot of things, but it's a great website. On that website /careers, you can find out about becoming an agent or an employee with State Farm also. Some of the careers that are offered at State Farm: actuarial. This department develops insurance coverages and rates for State Farm. The joke with us is the actuarials can only talk to their calculators. They have to talk to us once in a while. They hear from us and what's happening out there. The agency department, they're the department that supports the agents. State Farm agents are independent contractors who work every day to meet the needs of millions of State Farm customers across North America. As the face of State Farm in local communities, our agent force is at the center of what we do. And it will continue. Every decision the insurance industry has changed so much over the last 10 to 15 years. And as things have happened, State Farm has always said, how will this affect the agents? We want to go forward with the agents being the center of thrust of State Farm. Here's another waker-upper. This was a claim. In my attempt to kill a fly, I drove into a telephone pole. As I mentioned, I didn't know a whole lot about pharmaceutical sales when I went into the interviews. Maybe as I talk about being a State Farm agent or an insurance agent, this will help you to understand a little bit better what an insurance agent does, or in my case, a State Farm agent does. The first thing I would say is that State Farm differs from many of the other insurance companies. When I started as an agent, it was pretty tough. At that time, you had to have a college degree and work experience. You do not have to have a college degree today. They do want work experience, whether that be with State Farm or others, but you do go through it's not easy to become a State Farm agent, but it is worth it. Many companies, when I started, would interview somebody, give them a rate book, and send them out onto the streets. I would say one of the things that differentiates State from other companies, the quality of training and the depth of knowledge that do set us apart. We have 4 things that we're known for at State Farm. 1, our customer service. Consumer research shows that even in today's technology-driven world, shoppers still want relationships. They still want to be valued. Customer experience does matter at State Farm and at my office. The second is products. As I mentioned, State Farm sells close to 100 products. Price. As you watch TV and hear advertisements, you hear a lot about price, and you hear a lot about getting quotes. And State Farm, by some people, is thought of as more of a high-end company. Our market is middle-class America. You would be surprised. Our rates for the good risks, good drivers, and other ways that we look at risks are very competitive. And the last and probably the most important is our financial stability. We will be there today and we'll be there tomorrow to keep our promises. We rank towards the top of most financial and consumer service reports. The next wake up of an accident, I was on my way to the doctor with rear end trouble when my universal joint gave way, causing me to have an accident. My growing business process consisted of many phone calls, door to door, getting out into the community as much as possible. When I was a new agent, there were 3 big players: State Farm, Farmers, and Allstate. There were some independents that carry some of the other companies, but those were the ones that were known. Obviously, it's changed. There's a lot of players now. Also, when I was a new agent, many of the established agents had a philosophy of put a few years in, get your business built up, and then play. I don't think you can do that anymore. There's so many players out there. I work harder now than I did as a brand new agent. I work longer hours. I'm not complaining at that. I feel lucky to have a job. I get up every morning and I'm grateful to have a job. But I put in a lot of hours. That's my choice. You could work less hours and still do okay. But I want to have my business thrive. A lot of the leads come differently now because many people are on do not call lists. I support that. I'm on the do not call list myself. It's hard to get people at home. Many people have cell phones. So one of the biggest areas of finding leads nowadays is through what they call internet aggregators. When you click on something online wanting a quote, immediately your name and information is going to be fed to 4 or 5 different agents, and they're all going to try to get in touch with you as soon as possible. The biggest way that I grow and the way that I like to grow is through referrals. I get a lot of referrals from satisfied clients. Although I don't do as much actual quoting, my team members do the quoting. Every one of my team members is licensed with the state of Utah. And there's still plenty for me to do. I'm the CEO of my business. I do the advertising. I have 4 employees to teach and train. I do the payroll. I'd say that one of the hardest things about my business is finding and keeping good employees. You would think with the economy the way it is, I would have an easier time, but it's still hard when I tell a potential employee that they have to pass 2 hard tests with the state of Utah, become licensed, and then trained with State Farm before they can really do anything other than answer the phone. That takes a little bit of the incentive out of it. Some of them, I think, would prefer to just walk in a job and start working. Learning about insurance and being good about it takes time and effort. Some of the candidates are not willing to put that kind of effort into it. Some of the candidates that are from my generation have a harder time learning the web part of the business. It's just, I'm the same way. If I had to learn it from start, I would really have a rough time with the internet and everything. I'm an S Corp, so I'm actually an employee of Bryan Johnson Insurance Agency, Inc., and then I have other employees. My commissions that I get have to pay for rent, which I rent my office from myself, payroll, taxes, utilities, advertising, things like that. This is my office in Provo, right by the hospital on Bulldog Boulevard, you'd probably recognize it because it's by Carl's Jr. This is my team, myself. The one to the side of me is my wife, and she works with me. She's here today. She works with me, and as long as she's not at the office, I'm the boss. But if she's at the office, I'm still the boss. She's really easy to work with. It's interesting. The gentleman in the back is a new employee. He has a master's degree, worked at Lockheed, with the economy the way it's done, he's changing careers. He wants to be a State Farm agent, so he's getting experience in my office so that he can go to State Farm and hopefully get a position with State Farm as an agent. I put this in, as you graduate, jobs have stress, jobs have challenges. Exercise. This is one of my loves. I like to run marathons. I like to do triathlons. This is the tail end of a half Ironman that I did this summer. It takes the stress off you when you're able to exercise on a routine basis. Some of the ways we try to set ourselves apart from the competition. My office is open 8 through 6, 9 to 5 on the weekends instead of the typical 9 to 5. It's 8 to 5 on Friday. I mean, I work till 8 o'clock on Wednesdays if there are appointments. It's my way of offering people who work and cannot come in during the normal hours to come in and see me. I mentioned that I don't do a lot of quoting. One of the things that I do with clients, I try to sit down with my clients every few years and do a review. This is a book that my employees make up. If you come in for an interview, or not an interview, but an appointment, we prepare a book and I individualize it to the clients, and it's a very good review of your insurance. That's something you'll never get from an internet company. Many times on Thursdays, I find myself in northern Utah County in Salt Lake because I've had many of my clients migrate that way. And so I'll meet with them at their homes or their business and do that same review with them. Another way of setting ourselves apart from the competition. All of my employees are licensed, as I mentioned, with the state of Utah. We try our hardest to describe coverages as we quote them. We just don't quote you the state minimums and say this is the price. I don't like the state minimums. It's not enough insurance. We describe what coverages we are in detail as we quote. So the quote might last an extra 5 minutes, but we hope you've got a lot more out of the quote. And we've had people tell us over the years, boy, you're the only one that really told us what we were getting a quote on. Along with that, we hope you could, if you came into our office, you'd say, this is a warm office. We have soft drinks, we have water, we have cookies. It's a nice place to come and visit. I was asked to share some of my frustrations as well as good times as an insurance agent. And anytime you deal with the public, you're exposed to a wide variety of personalities. Some frustrations come from some of the business people who, in reality, know they've purchased a legal contract, and they need to go by that legal contract, but because of their position, they seem to think that they should be treated differently. That's a frustration for me. You're buying a contract when you buy an insurance policy. Because it's a booklet, not everything is covered. And it's been frustrating over the years for the handful that have felt like, because of their position in the community, their status, that they should come before anybody else. We have to treat everybody the same. Rich, poor, known, unknown. We have to treat them the same, and we try to do our very best. And that State Farm Claims does a great job. I have agreed with them almost all the time, and I can look in the mirror and say I'm happy that I am a representative of this company. Some people, I believe, just get up in the morning and say, I'm going to make it hard on everybody I deal with today. And that's the way they do it. I feel sorry for them because something happened in their life that made them that way, but they take it out on others. And I feel sorry for my team members because they have to put up with that. And so that's a part of my career that's not as fun and it's frustrating. But any of you who take a position dealing with the public will deal with that, regardless of what industry and what company. Frustration also comes from trying our hardest to give proper coverage. Some just don't want to listen, or some just don't want to take our advice, and then they have a claim and they don't have the proper coverage, and we've offered it to them, and that's frustrating. My philosophy in sales is to give my client a good professional information, a professional opinion, and then let them, the client, make the decision. Some never bother making that decision. They say, call me back. I want the life insurance, but call me back. And it ends up being a never-ending sales phone call cycle, which I wish was different. That's frustrating to me. And maybe if I use different tactics of salesmanship, it would be different, but that's the way I do it. Some of the good times, many of the recruiters for insurance companies would talk about trips, exotic trips that you can have for selling certain amounts of insurance and the things that come. And those times are fun. You're with loved ones in great places. But I would prefer to think that the best times for me come when somebody's had a really hard time. Not that I'm happy that they had a really hard time. That's happened. But that they have purchased the right insurance, and now that I'm able to help them out. I can think back on the fires that have burned homes to the ground, and I've been there and I've walked through the home giving clients a hug, and they've purchased the proper insurance and their home gets rebuilt, and those are great times. I can think of every one of those, and it's interesting how your senses work. I think of those homes that burned, and that smell comes into my senses. It's an amazing thing. You always hear stories about life insurance agents. Oh, that life insurance agent tried to sell me the life insurance. Life insurance is a very important part of your financial profile. I would rather take a check or a checkbook with a great balance on it to a widow than flowers. Taking care of somebody financially after the loss of a loved one is a real privilege. Selling life insurance is not easy. People don't like to talk about it. They don't like to talk about the death of the person that they love the most. But if it's done and that hard event happens, you are actually a hero. I can think of one circumstance. I've delivered a number of life insurance benefits to people. I can think of one. It's a couple that started in Provo. We did their insurance there. They moved to Wyoming. They moved back. Every time there was a move, we'd revisit their life insurance. And we had revisited it, and a couple of years later, I got a call from the wife's father and said that her husband had passed away in his sleep the night before. He was only 37 years old. And it was interesting because at the time, they had both been lost their jobs. They were employed, but they were underemployed with their new jobs. And they were on the verge of losing their home. Because of this life insurance, she was able to keep her home, whereas she would have lost it without. She was able to do things that she would not have been able to done. Instead of being in the back seat financially, back of the car, she was in the driver's seat. I had a neat experience the following fall. You probably know around here there's UEA at the time you have your fall break, and we were in the security line at the Salt Lake Airport going down to, with everybody else from Utah, to Disneyland. And I hear this, Bryan, in line behind me, and I look back, and it was Julie, and the person who had lost her husband. And so we caught up a little bit, and she was with her 2 children on her way to Hawaii for a family reunion. That would have never happened if she wouldn't have taken care of things with life insurance. She recently got remarried, and we were on her invitation list to her marriage. It's amazing the trust they put in you. That trust is interesting because there would be those out in the sales world that would maybe take advantage of that trust and do hard things, but I can say that every time I met with Julie, she would have done anything that I asked. But every time I made a suggestion, I felt like her husband was sitting there watching, and I did not want to take advantage, nor would I. But to me, that was a unique 3D way of looking at how those decisions should have been made and how my recommendation should have been made. Randy, how are we on time? Okay. I'm going to wake you up with another one. An invisible car came out of nowhere, struck my car, and vanished. Some of the things that you need to do to be an agent, to be an insurance agent, or in our case, a team member, you must pass property and casualty and life and health with the state of Utah. I'm able to sell mutual funds and securities, certain securities, so I also have to have a Series 6 and 63 license for securities. You also have to have 24 hours of continuing education every 2 years in the insurance. I have continued education and testing on security products. Some of the other things about State Farm and some of the areas of employment, we have a bank at State Farm. Most people don't know that. It's more of a home operation and an internet operation, but you can buy products through the State Farm agents. But you can be employed at the State Farm Bank. You can be on the Bank Response Center. Claims is where I know most of the State Farm employees other than the agents. Our claims center in Utah is in Sandy, and they're the ones who take care of your claims. They do a great job. I tell people when they complain about all this premium I pay, I say, you need to come and spend a day with our claims adjusters in Sandy and see all the checks that they write for claims. They write a lot. One of the things that I do also that sets me apart from other agents, I would think, is most of the time claims are reported in an agent's office, but the claims people take it from there. And we don't hear about it unless there's an issue. But I have a 5-day follow-up where personally I call the insureds and just make sure that everything's going okay with that claim. There's clerical and administrative support at State Farm. We do college internships. We have many customer service. If you call my office after hours, it directs you into a 24-hour service, and they'll answer questions about your policy. They'll take a claim. And so we have jobs there. We have facility management, administrative services. We have financing and accounting, human resources, health service, information technology systems, learning and development, which is helping all the employees at State Farm and agents to be up to where they need to be on what they need to know. We have the litigation departments. This department is comprised of lawyers who provide a full range of legal services. We have marketing and advertising, which you might be interested as business majors. State Farm has been called one of America's greatest brands. Many of you know, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. You probably didn't know who wrote that, Barry Manilow. Almost everything you see at State Farm, whether a television commercial, major sports sponsorship, or online ad, has been guided in some way by our marketing department. We've been sponsors for many years for the Utah Jazz and other things. We have departments in planning and analysis, public relations, communications. Underwriters is another big thing at an insurance company. The underwriters, we put in an application for insurance, and we have our guidelines that we go by. The underwriters, they put their seal of approval on it. They're the ones that make sure that the driving record has been checked, that it's appropriate, that we haven't left anybody out of the household. The wife applies, and they have ways of finding out that, oh, that wife has a husband with a DUI. Well, we're a preferred company, and we don't write insurance for somebody with a DUI. That's their job, is to make sure that our rates can hopefully continue as they are, by continually working the accounts that we have as well as the new accounts, and making sure that they're proper for our particular market that we want to do at State Farm. We have catastrophic services, 1,700 dedicated claims adjusters, 12 mobile vehicles on the ready for that storm that's going to come in, and they're going to come in their vans and take care of for example, the Midwest just a few days ago had some real severe storms. There are a lot of State Farm vans there. They're taking care of the customers there that have lost homes because of the storms. As I mentioned, we have 1,700 agents in the United States and Canada. In Utah, we have 150 agents and about 150 employees, most of those in claims. Each office also employs like I do. Employee compensation and agent earnings in 2009 totaled for State Farm more than $48.7 million. State Farm's also deeply invested in Utah with bonds, stocks, mortgages, and other assets, and CDs totaling more than $793 million as of last December. The company pays Utah premium taxes, which totaled $7.5 million last year, and more than $730 in other taxes. We have different zones. My zone is the Great Western Zone, which consists of Utah, Nevada, Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, and Wyoming. And there are zones across the United States for that. We are trying to be more green. We have charity that we do a lot with the Red Cross. We teamed up with the U.S. Coast Guard. Education agents in Utah have donated to the teachers with children at risk and other types of things. I think we're close to being ready for any questions that you might have. I'll try to see your hands with there's a little bit of a glare. Please. I think at your age, term is probably for most people the best way to go. You can get the most insurance for the least amount of money. I like all three types: term, universal life, and whole life. Within those, there are different products within those. But if it still seems like yesterday that I was in your shoes, so you're probably on a budget. And so you would want to get the most insurance for the least amount. And so term would probably be the one, unless you wanted to force yourself to save a little bit, then universal life. Please.
How many licenses do you hold, and how long does it take to get licensed?
I hold a property and casualty, and then a life and health, which allows me to sell all of State Farm's insurance policies. And then I have a Series 6 and 63 license, which allows me to sell the mutual funds that State Farm sells. I can't sell to Eugene Seeley, I can't sell him Microsoft shares. That requires a different license. But some of the mutual funds that we have may have Microsoft in those, and that's what I would sell. And it took me, I was still with Pfizer, it probably took me 2 or 3 months to study, fly down, pass the tests, and get all ready. I would say 3 months would be a good range for some people. And it's interesting, some of my employees, it took them a long time many times of going to the testing center and trying to take the test and pass it. Some did it the first time, and some took 3 or 4 times to pass it. And that was no indication on how good of an employee that they were. It's just some people test better than others. Yes?
What are the major disqualifiers, like you said, like a DUI from insurance, or things that'll raise your rates?
The number of tickets you have, any serious violation like reckless driving without a license. You've got to have a license to get insurance with us. But there are companies out there that specialize in various markets, and there's a price for that. But you do have to pay more for the insurance if your driving record is not stellar. Yes?
What do you know about dividend paying whole life insurance?
I love our whole life policies. A dividend is paid, typically a whole life policy, you're paying more when you're younger, so you can pay less relatively when you're older. And so that difference typically is invested in, with our company, high quality bonds. Our bonds, so they're going to go to the state of Utah or entities that sell very good quality bonds. And so those bonds, they kind of mushroom. The first few years you get your annual notice and it hasn't done that much, and then they start to go more and more. I have whole life policies on myself that are over 20 years old, and when the market was tanking the last 2 years, my cash value increased 2 to 3 times what I had put in that year in premiums with the increase in cash value. I love whole life if you want a policy that is permanent for when you die. Because if you buy term, that term's gonna stop. If you buy a 20-year term right now, 20 years from now, when that comes time for renew again, it's going to be pretty expensive, and a lot of people dump their policies when they're in their 50s or 60s. But if you want a policy to say, I want to leave something to my children, even though they're grown up, I want something to take care of estate issues, I want something because maybe my health might be not so hot when I die, and there might be some medical issues that I need to pay for that you could borrow against from your policy, that's a great place to look for whole life. Randy.
Bryan, as I see you as a small businessman, can you break down, not in terms of numbers, but percentages of where you receive income? You mentioned earlier that you got income from the rent that you pay to yourself, the business pays to you. Can you break that just briefly, roughly?
Yeah.
Where your income comes from, and maybe break that down as a percentage?
Okay. First of all, we were lucky enough to purchase the building we're in about 16, 17 years ago. We've been lucky to be able to pay for that. So the corporation pays rent to Bryan Johnson. So that's money going home, although it's money that came in through commission. So one way or the other, I'd see that, but it's a good way to make it a tax deduction for the corporation also. As far as the corporation and where the monies come from, State Farm is the largest auto insurer. The auto insurance is also my biggest area of revenue in the business. I would say that 60% of my revenue comes from auto insurance commissions. And I would say another 25 to 30% comes from home, renters, condo, business type insurances. And then the last 10% probably from life insurance, mutual fund sales. We sell a few like disability insurance, things like that. Please.
What's your favorite part of the engagement? I know is it like the insurance aspect of it, or the financial services? I know you guys offer a lot of different products.
I would say it's a little of both. It's taking care of people the proper way on the property and casualty, but it's a harder sell. When I said to get a life insurance policy is a harder sell, because you've got to convince that person that they're not immortal, and they may die. And if they're, for example, if they're married and they have children, that there's going to be a big economic impact on them, and a lot of people don't want to look at that. So it's to me, it's a star on my head to sell the proper coverage on the financial services part of it. And another part of it is I own my business. I work hard, but also if I want to take a day off, I can take a day off. I just ask myself, do I want to take that day off? Can my business stand that day off? And I take it off. If I would have stayed with Pfizer, that would have been about 30 years into it now. I think I would have been at 4 to 5 weeks a year in paid vacation. I don't know what I would do with that. I get a little bit nervous on 3-day weekends. I do like taking some time off, and that's if I need to take 2 or 3 hours off to go watch a child's dance or baseball game, I can do that, and that's nice having that flexibility also.
Well, thanks so much for coming. Let's give him a round of applause. And this is a token of our appreciation. Thanks so much. Thank you.